So most welcome to all the panelists that we have. I'm going to introduce them. We at the State of Affairs have again came back and to actually come up with this important session along with the important panelists that we have today. Our topic is Indo-Pacific largely. Then we'll have our individual take on the issue. But before I just uh, I'll just crash into that. First thing is that I need to introduce the guests first. We have Dr. Sanjeev Kumar. He's a research fellow with ICWA, formerly with JNU, ICS Delhi, Peking University, CASS Beijing, and tracks India, China, and world affairs, and also BRICS SCO and Asian Infrastructure Development Bank. So we also have with us Simran Wadia. She's a research scholar at JNU and is in the specialized area of Japanese studies, East Asian studies rather, I'll say. And she has been a former researcher at Observer Research Foundation. Then we also have with us an equally important guest, Dr. Yaqoob Hassan. He's from Jammu and Kashmir. He has his PhD from Jamia on Pakistan-USA relations after 9/11, and he has been to Istanbul University for postdoc. He has also been a visiting fellow at Stimson Center, Washington D.C. Currently, he's at the Central University of Kashmir. So, most welcome to all of you, sir, and to the Simran ma'am also. Today, we are going to discuss, and I'm yet a student of the international relations. This session is purely academic. It's purely non-political in its nature and in its conduct. So everybody is, entitled to have the free opinion about the subject. So it's Indo-Pacific that we largely say and call it. Rather, it was earlier called as the Pacific and India separately, or India-Pacific. It's only after 2017 that the increasing importance of the Indo-Pacific region in the geopolitics, this region has been now termed as the Indo-Pacific region. So a lot has been happening in the region, be that the geopolitics, be that the China and USA locking its horns into the region, be that the world supply chains and the world trade that is taking place through this region, be that the issue of Taiwan that is also an important subject to talk to. But largely, we will try to dissect from all that and try to focus on this issue of Indo-Pacific. The first and foremost thing is that this Indo-Pacific region presently is the hotspot of the world geopolitics. The reason being that traditionally or conventionally, USA enjoyed the two nation. Its strategic location amongst the two nations, two oceans rather. So it had no any neighborly existential threat to its territory. But now that since China is claiming its position at the high table of global geopolitics, obviously there are issues that may come that may stem out of it. Chinese aggression, be that with this allegation of the Wuhan being the originator of the virus, this coronavirus, and then many other things that are related to it. So precisely, I'll just have the first, take on the issue, and she will open it up. Simran Wadia, I'll invite her to share her thoughts with us on the subject. Simran Wadia.
Thank you so much, Mehraj, for this opportunity, and I'm glad to share this platform with all of you here. So I would just start off with a brief note on the background of the Indo-Pacific. So as we all are very much aware of the fact that the Indo-Pacific region has been evolving, and personally, I feel that it will keep evolving over time, as we all can see that the circumstances of the 21st century have called for a shift in the security architecture from the Asia Pacific, which was to the Indo-Pacific, which was triggered by the rise of China, then the growth of India's economic and strategic clout, and then most importantly, I feel the growing importance of the Indian Ocean as a strategic trade corridor that carries almost two-thirds of the oil shipments and a third of bulk cargo is some reasons that have called for a shift to from Asia Pacific to the Indo-Pacific, and these factors have led to the rise of the stakeholders calling for a free and open Indo-Pacific. And then Japan has been one of the first countries that came up with this concept. That was, I think, in 2007 when former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe visited India, and in his speech of the confluence of the two seas, he spoke of the broader Asia, and that is when the establishment of the Quad came up, and the Indo-Pacific as well. Then in 2016, in his Tokyo International Conference of African Development, he unveiled the Japan's free and open Indo-Pacific strategy. And according to him, the fundamental aim of the strategy has been the shared prosperity, which also necessitates improving connectivity and infrastructure projects, along with maintaining peace and stability. And also, I would like to point out the three main pillars of his strategy that were the promotion and establishment of the rule of law, then the freedom of navigation and free trade, and then pursuit of economic prosperity, commitment for peace and stability, that is capacity building on maritime law enforcement. Also, I think Australia was one of the first countries to officially adopt this term Indo-Pacific in its 2013 Defense White Paper. However, the term gained a lot of traction under former President Donald Trump's presidency, when he called for a free and open Indo-Pacific, a region where independent nations could thrive in freedom and peace. And also, the current Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga has also emphasized on strengthening the vision of the free and open Indo-Pacific. Also, recently, he visited US, and the President Biden and Suga had their first summit meeting, wherein they emphasized on the strengthening of this vision of the Indo-Pacific region. And also, I would like to point out the fact that Japan has been trying to protect its interests in the East China Sea against the rampant Chinese intrusions around the Senkaku Islands, which are claimed by China as the Diao Islands. And Japan claims this area as the Senkaku Islands and hosts the entire Sea of Japan, which is spread across the Pacific Ocean and the Pacific coast of the US and Canada. So this area endures a significant volume of commercial and military traffic and is an important sea lane of communication for Japan. Therefore, to protect these lanes and keep them free and open to sustain trade, Japan aims to build a network of the US allies. And more so, India is also considered one of the vital partners of the Japan's free and open Indo-Pacific strategy, owing to India-Japan's strong relations under PM Modi and Abe's tenure, that they developed their relations to the strategic and global partnership. So they have their shared vision of goals, as they are the Asian maritime powers, and the two countries have also been strengthening their cooperation in areas of maritime security and connectivity and the stakeholders in the Quad. So I believe that India and Japan are pretty strong allies of the US and have a lot to gain through these alliances. We have a trilateral arrangement between India, US, and Japan, which can further bolster this vision of the Indo-Pacific region in the coming future. And also, I believe that one of the common concerns of these three nations is that of China's growing assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific region, for which they cooperate and make efforts in strengthening their position in the region and counter Chinese moves. For now, I would like to stop here.
Thank you for the initial remarks, Simran. Now I'll just rush to Dr. Yaqoob since he's not feeling well. First of all, I would like to thank him individually because he has made it to the show. Reason being that he has some health issues. He has been operated in last week. So I'll just rush to him since he's tracking the U.S. foreign policy. Especially, he must be having a close insight about the importance of Indo-Pacific and the security paradigm that's opening and playing out. Dr. Yaqoob, can we have your initial remarks on the subject, sir?
Thank you, Maraj, for this invitation. It's a good, rather a privilege to share the virtual days with all the guests, Simran and Dr. Sanjeev. Although most of I may right now be an academic, but most of my strategic thought has been shaped at the IDSC. I spent almost 7 years there, so I may sound probably pessimistic or too realistic. I excuse you for that. Let there be no doubt that we are at the cusp of the great power competition. It has rather intensified over there. So it's going to intensify. it is going to get sharpened. That's one point. The second point is, according to recent research, and that Chinese are going to replace Americans by 2030. So Americans have just done 10 years. Within these 10 years, they will do everything. They will not let any stone unturned to not to let China to replace them. Economically. Provided China, the economic trajectory the China, they have recently last 1 decade is going to that smooth way. And the Simran, she did raise the 3 points of the Indo-Pacific, the reasons for 3 points. I think one point I guess she missed is, or I may add, is the balance of power in the region actually. So it's actually the power game going on. And so then you add other things, economic, strategy, other things. I think it's more than that. It's to controlling the world order. Who is going to be the hegemon in the region? And this the tussle between Chinese and the Americans is not going to be felt only in the Indo-Pacific, in the South Asia or the Asia region, or it's going to be felt in the Africa region. It's going to be felt in the Latin American. Yes, this sort of the region, I'm saying the Indo-Pacific or the Asia, or the greater Asia, it's going to be its impact would be felt tremendously. The reason being that it's almost between the Indo-Pacific region, this region, particularly the South China Sea, it carries almost 5 trillion economic activities. It's around 40% of the total trade of the global trade that passes through the Strait of Hormuz and Strait of Malacca. That's going to be strategically important. That's going to be economically very much important. Then one who controls the region is going to control the world order. And then one who controls the world, or whether China will reshape or will carry with the same sort of a world order, we don't know if we're going to see it. But it's actually tussle of that. And that's why I added the balance of power in the region. But now you have the East Asian region states, and they are not hedging between Chinese and the Americans, because the security, so far when the security aspect is concerned, they are more inclined towards the Americans. But when the economic factor comes in, they wanted to maintain that economic relation with China. So there's also in the fix. They may have to, realistically speaking, they may have to pick the choice, whether they wanted to, which side they're going to pick. Following the hedging policy, I think when but it's going to be intensified, as I said earlier, the war means the great power competition. Their hedging policy, I think that's not going to be there. I think there is a limitation of that hedging policy for the East Asian country, particularly those who are neighbors of the China. Well said that. No, it's impact. Now I wanted to add one more thing about India we used to call India as the weakest link within this Quad. The reason being that it was taking 1 step forward and 2 steps backward. What I learned is over the years when I was following it at IDSA and interacting with the bureaucrats, and particularly those the retired ones, and being in touch with the Indian bureaucrats, they were divided. There was still the old guards who wanted to have a sort of what they called the so-called the strategic autonomy, or wanted to maintain at least the working relationship with China. Now that has now gone out of window due to what we see the last year in the Galwan at the LAC. The LAC has now it has become another LOC, the bloody line. That we have seen this the militarization of the LAC. So now India used to call it let's be too cautious. No, there are the voices coming I'm talking within the policymakers. I'm not talking about the analysts on the scholars, within the policymakers. If you go to if you interact with those who are at the helm of affairs, they will tell you, they say, no, hell with this, what they call with the strategic, ambiguity or strategic, autonomy. Let's completely embrace the Quad. Let's make it securitize the Quad, or let's at least, if not that, let's at least go completely embrace the America-led order in the region. So the coming years are going to be very crucial, which particularly, yes, there are going to be some sort of a working relationship between Americans and the Chinese on certain stages. It could be the global warming, it could be the sort of COVID issue or blah, blah, blah. But more and less, I see and the intensification of the rivalry, intensification of the great power competition, it's going to impact the region overall, also our the South Asia region. I think I will stop here, and then I can add more comments later.
Thank you for your initial remarks, sir. Actually, the thing that you mentioned, that by 2030 that the power is going to shift, global power is going to shift that way. I'll stay pessimistic about that, but that's an individual opinion. You have clearly in-depth analysis of the subject. So I'll quickly rush to Dr. Sanjeev, since he has been tracking the world affairs, the Indo-China especially closely. I'll just have the initial remarks from Dr. Sanjeev on what's happening and how are things hotting up into the Indo-Pacific region. Over to Dr. Sanjeev.
Yeah, first, let me first thank you, Mr. Mehraj Bhatt. It was first communication. It was a pleasure to communicate with you. And I would also like to congratulate the two previous speakers for their excellent presentations. And I enjoyed listening both of you. As I conveyed to you, I will just make a few short remarks. And let me begin by saying that if I read the Chinese, I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, you are, sir.
Yeah. If I read the Chinese literature about Indo-Pacific, I think one or two issues come out very clearly. First is they think that there is an India factor and there is a China factor of Indo-Pacific. As far as India factor is concerned, in their view, India is important in this Quad, as it can use to contain China, and going by its size and population and other factors, India could contain China to certain extent. And that is why Quad and Indo-Pacific India factor from Chinese perspective is very evident. The Chinese factor is, of course, they say that Indo-Pacific is important because they want to contain China. All countries want to disrupt the rise of China and contain China, and that is why this factor is important from their perspective. From Indian perspective, as Prime Minister has given a statement various times, but the recent statement in East Asia Summit, where he proposed Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiative, I think we need to study that also in detail. In recent past, as we all are aware, the India-China relations have been severely affected by incident at border, especially since May 2020, and due to that, because there is a serious differences between the Indian side and Chinese side on the whole gambit of relationship, and basically I will say that Chinese side want to decouple the boundary issue or de-link the boundary issue with the overall relationship, and Indian side is certainly not ready for that. India has a different position. As in the past, India has highlighted that peace and tranquility at the border will affect the overall relationship, and that is most important for India, that the peace and tranquility at border should be maintained. So that is why this has also affected, I will say, or it has capacity to affect the Chinese position or the Chinese thinking on Indo-Pacific, because as the previous speaker very rightly said, that the Chinese thought many times there are writings which suggest that India was the weakest link within Indo-Pacific. But due to the border situation, I think we need to analyze whether this position will change. Thank you for giving the chance to speak. I think I will stop here. Thanks.
Thank you, sir, for your initial remarks. So I'll directly go to Dr. Yaqoob on the question of, since the America First policy and the Quad, to my mind, they seem to be not in synchronization with each other. Reason being, if it's America First, then you have to have your alliances and have your allies, face the China threat on their own. But if Quad has to, if the way there is a lot of expectation from the Quad, From Dr. Yaqoob, I would like to have your viewpoint on that America First and Quad kind of policy. Are they in supplementary nature to each other or not? Is it going to work? Is Quad the priority, or is the America First the priority from the US perspective, especially?
Excellent question, Mera Saab. Let me first come to the first question you asked. You raised it when I said that Chinese are going to replace Americans. It wasn't my own opinion, actually. I say that I think, of course, I didn't quote it. It was a UBS in a survey that finds around 57% global investors. They predicted China will replace the US as the world's biggest superpower by 2030. So, and the majority agree with that sentiment in every region except the United States. We say that only 40%, 47% Americans expected China going to replace the Americans. It's still huge. Even it may be the lowest as compared to 47, but it's still huge. And it's not only this. The USB survey, if you go see the trajectory, the economic trajectory, and see it, and you can connect to the dots. How much is Americans and the Chinese investing in their own, whether in the neighborhood and in the extended neighborhood? How much is China providing? Call it a checkbook diplomacy, and how much is China providing the aid, or how much is China keeping it? Is helping its allies economically as compared to the Americans. Now that's one thing. The second is, I think that was the President Trump's policy. But he was a traditionalist. He was an isolationist. Call him anything. He fitted in every adjective. That America first sort of. And then you have, it's not only the America who's talking at America first. You have India calling Atmanirbhar, the make in India. That's also then it's not only the American Indians now. It's a new trend actually. I think the COVID has actually accentuated that sort of a trend. With Biden coming in, we have seen again what he, that reclaiming what they call so-called the older Americans. Now the recent, if you see it has now again reclaimed Turkey back in the bringing in now Biden and Erdogan are going to meet in the I think in the NATO conference, and they are going to be talk more about now this defense and the other strategic things. And the Americans and the Turks are talking about the airport security at the Kabul. Now bringing back its dissidents. The Turkey was one of the dissidents. The way the Trump had had a relationship with whether it's South Korea or with Turkey and with the other countries. Now I don't see now the Americans are paying more. Americans are like they're saying that America first. What the Trump was saying, the America first. What the Biden, what's my understanding of Biden's foreign policy is saying reclaiming the America back. Means going back to the Obama's period, not to what the Trump was doing with like that isolationist policy. It's not going to be an isolationist Americans. But yes, I wanted to make one point here. The difference is America does not have that money right now to give its allies as Chinese have now. But one point, yes, what Americans have is a defense technology. What Americans have is a weapon. That's why we see that the close relationship between India and America. That's people within the policymaker within the in India are saying that it's good to have a good relationship. America, at least it will help us to get weapons. It will help us to get some modern technology and share the intelligence. That's the America have in the kitty now. Except money, they have everything right now. What I was trying to say is that America will do everything to stop the China. It may go to militarize the Quad. It may make a Quad NATO Quad, or it will go to back to Turkey again. It will go to Africa, but it does not have that economy right now which can push it. Look at the China can invest around $60 billion in the Pakistan, which is known as the bottomless pit hole. It can invest 40 billion or more than in the Central Asia. How much is America providing? What's it the aid? What's its loans? What's its funding? If you connect to those dots, I'm saying that the Chinese have an upper hand when it comes to the economy. And just wanted to mention it. And it's the money that speaks. And that's why you have East Asian countries. They are very sort of sort of cautious to pick up a side right now, because economically they want to be the China right now. Although they will know that the China is a threat, the China is an expansionist power, but they don't want to irritate, they don't want to alienate want the Chinese now because of the economy. The economics to call it anything, it controls your politics. It's not the politics that will control the economy here. I hope I was clear.
Thank you for these insightful things that you mentioned about that. If America First is not in synchronization with the Quad, how is it that Atmanirbhar is going to help Quad to build to a next level? But I'll straight away go to Simran for since she's tracking Japanese approach and Japan's foreign policy, she must be tracking that how since Japan is the originator of this idea of Quad, and it's more concerned than India, than Australia. Reason being that it's the next door neighbor to China. So Simran, will you kindly tell us about the Japanese approach of Quad and overall about the Quad, about the Indo-Pacific issue, as the larger convergence of the interests between U.S., India, Japan, and Australia. Over to Simran.
Okay, so firstly, I would like to point out the fact that yes, Japan has been at the forefront of pursuing this Quad arrangement, with Abe in particular championing the concept and using his personal ties with President Trump to influence the US policy. And Japan's eagerness to pursue the Quad appears driven by the concern over China's increasing power and influence in the region. So the security concerns about China's intentions have spiked in Japan since the territorial dispute, as I mentioned earlier, which was the territorial dispute over the Senkaku Islands in the East China Sea, which flared up in 2010 mostly. And as this tension continues, Prime Minister Abe was anxious to establish a regional order that was not defined by China's economic and geographic dominance. So to this, he was trying to pursue a stronger security relationships along China's maritime periphery, particularly India. So I feel for Japan, India is one of the vital partners for Quad to, move forward, as they both have common concerns of China's aggressive behavior. Even India alone, I feel, cannot handle China's aggressive behavior. So I feel the Japan and India cooperation would be a better option for India to contain China. And then I mentioned about the trilateral arrangement between India, Japan, and the US, which can also be an important relationship for containing China. And also, I would like to mention that Japan's insecurity is also heightened by the perceptions that the United States may be a waning power in the region. And in addition to the shared concerns about China, uncertainty about US credibility and staying power may also motivate India and Japan to keep the United States engaged via the strategic framework. And Japan's eagerness to bolster Quad is only driven by China's growing power and influence in the region. And Japan also believes in the interoperability and collaboration over shared defense and security concerns through Quad that may help deter China. So, as in September 2020, Japan and India signed their defense agreement, which was AXA, the acquisition of the cross-servicing agreement, which would allow the Japan and India's bases to have access to each other's bases and navies. So this could also help in, sort of bolstering the region of the Indo-Pacific and Quad. However, in 2016, India and US signed the same agreement. So I feel that would also help in bolstering Quad in the future times.
So now that we are in the middle of the session, I'll just go over to Dr. Sanjeev. Dr. Sanjeev, can I have your take on this? That greater expansionism by China, the maritime expansion, messing up with the United Nations laws for the seas, and the border disputes with most of its neighbors, but then having a robust economy. Allegations that pandemic, the outbreak of the virus in China did hide the data, and there is a lack of transparency across the world. There is a growing opinion and discontent with the China, the way it's conducting itself. Number two is that this greater expansionism, this greater tendency that it's going with its wolf warriorism, is that the binding factor that no, God has to have its teeth, that that's the only option left for these four countries, be that USA, India, Japan, and Australia. The reason being that China is the single most biggest threat to the according to the US strategy for Indo-Pacific report released by the US Defense. I'll just have your take on this, Dr. Sanjeev.
Yeah, thank you for the question. On the first, I will say that the last party congress, the Communist Party Congress, they came out very clearly. It held in November 2017 that China has arrived on the world stage. Now there is a debate whether this was a premature announcement. But of course, when we see the foreign relations, they follow a hierarchical foreign relations. And if you go by some of the document, it indicates clearly. They came out with a white paper on Southeast Asia in 2017, and very rightly they said, very rightly from their perspective, that a small and medium-sized countries should not get entangled in this. Means saying that their hierarchical approach in foreign policy, where they divide countries in a small, medium, and big power. I'm saying that the sovereignty of the state is not equal when they follow foreign policy towards other countries or foreign relations. So the rise has certainly rise or their aggressive behavior has certainly created problems for those who have territorial or maritime dispute with China. And around 10 years ago, they came up with the ambition of becoming a maritime power. And we know that there are concerns about the aggressive behavior in maritime domain from Chinese side. And that is why I think Quad is quite relevant. And Quad shows that there is a concern from about China, and that is why this formation has emerged. And China should understand this. I think I would like to stop here.
Thank you, sir. Now over to Dr. Yaqoob, because he must be leaving. One last thing I'll like to hear from you, sir, is that most of the people, most of the scholars, most of the policymakers have jumped the gun and accepted that there is a new Cold War on the offing. I'll just have your viewpoint on that, sir. Is it now the reality that from the realistic lens there is an all-out Cold War going on between US and China? From the perspective of US, what's happening in the Capitol Hill, sir?
Another excellent question, Maharaj. Let me first just raise another interesting point, and that is going to connect with your question is about the Cold War. It wasn't in 2007 first time that Japanese, raised this or conceived this concept of the Quad. If you go to the Cold War era, it was the Japanese again. They said, let's have the Quad against the Russians. Then who was the member of the Quad then? One of the members who should have been proposed was the China. So the China was one of the members of the Quad during the Cold War era. So that's what I'm saying, that it's not that, that ideological. That's what the people say that, look, I may sound too pessimistic here or too realistic here, saying that it is the League of Democracies or it's the liberal international order or a free world. No, it's actually the controlling the affairs of the world. It's being the hegemon. When I say that it's being the hegemon, it means that the Chinese and the Americans are openly confronting now. They are openly in the Cold War. We call it a Cold War 2.0. 2.0 called it give it the enemy. I think we do have two schools of the thought. One say that no, Cold War is already ended. It's not just a Cold War. It is usually the great power competition. But I am with another school of thought who says that the Cold War is actually being played. It's being played at a diplomatic level. It's being played at a strategic level. It's being played at the economic level. And look, see, the Americans have America, they have banned, they have sanctioned now the Chinese officials. Now Chinese officials have again sanctioned the American officials. Back to flow. Now the Chinese Americans are pressurizing Pakistanis now to completely overjump into Chinese ambit. If you wanted to resettle some sort of a relationship, or see what's happening in Afghanistan between China and America. No one talks it, but it's even forget about the greater sort of the turf wars which are being played in Latin America, or for that matter in this Southeast Asian region, even the periphery, even the, like I said, the Central Asian and the others. I think that we are at the cusp of the great power comes, as I said earlier. We're also having the Cold War. Who is going to be realistic? I think who's going to be the winner? I will again go to what John Meir Shammer says. One who's going to be realistic is going to be the winner. So depends. I think we are the coming in this decade. As I said, that by 2030 we'll be having a one superpower. If not, then we'll be having an anarchy. Yes, at the world level. I think that's going to hit us. That's going to hit us everyone here, one way or another.
Oh, thank you for these insightful things, sir. But then with US, it's the most realistic thing. That is the amongst the foreign policies of the world. The US has a foreign policy that's purely realistic, but then we cannot underestimate the wolf warriorism offered by China. But then over to Simran. Simran, since this pandemic has actually devastated the whole healthcare infrastructures across the world. Japan is also, it's in the second wave or perhaps in the third wave. It has actually destructed and actually overwhelmed every single healthcare institution in any country whosoever is battling with the second or third wave. Is there a, is Quad and China threat still the priority amongst this pandemic, or the pandemic is the priority above everything? From Simran.
Okay, so due to this pandemic, the entire world has been facing the economic stagnation. And particularly the Quad took traction under this very crisis. So while countering China ranks high on Quad's agenda, the unfolding of security environment makes it appear to have become the key agenda. So although the Quad has not outrightly stated this fact, but we still feel that China is the elephant in the room. And the fact that China has been excluded from this four-member Quad arrangement itself quantifies the logic behind the making of the Quad. And I would like to add that in 2020, when the crisis was in the middle, the pandemic was in the middle, there was a meeting held between the United States, India, Japan, and Australia, wherein given the rising concerns over Beijing's aggressive behavior and the growing speculations over China's handling of the COVID-19 outbreak in Wuhan, gave significance to the Tokyo meeting. So the attendees also called for stepping up the coordination to realize a free and open Indo-Pacific. However, I would also like to point out the fact that we can also, there's also a fact that the Quad has been pushed to further act on the non-traditional security objective due to this pandemic, aiming at the human security against fighting the virus. And also the situation has stretched the security envelope of the Quad, given the need to counter China's growing adventurism and, as you mentioned, the wolf warrior diplomacy. And also recently the Quad has come up with it's a vaccine initiative, which has been the Quad vaccine initiative, which is like in the second wave of India's second wave. A lot of countries has given aid to India, and the Quad vaccine initiative has been a path-breaking effort in the Quad summit, which was held in March. So the vaccine initiative basically says that 1 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines would be provided to the Southeast Asian countries by the end of 2022. And this initiative also shows that there have been collective efforts which can be leveraged for the global good of the entire world in such challenging times. So yeah, that's I would.
So with the for Dr. Sanjeev, I want to take the last thing from you, sir, is that the Taiwan question and the important change that and the prospects that we have as the citizens of this country, we want in the foreign policy paradigm of India. Does it need to have a departure from the non-aligned stance that it used to have? Is that going to cost heavily for the as an institutional system for us in the foreign policy projects and foreign policy prospects? So I would like to have your take on that. Is there a change in the foreign policy vis-a-vis the Quad and Indo-Pacific, or vis-a-vis India-China relations and the Taiwan question?
Yeah, thank you for this question. I will be brief here. I think the Indian government recognizes one China policy, and it does not recognize Tibet or Taiwan as separate identity. And I think at the government level, there is no change in one China policy. But of course, at non-governmental level, we find that there are a lot of arguments, or there are a lot of evidences who suggest that India should have more interactions at different level with Taiwan. But again, I think these foreign policy questions need to be understood, or need to be analyzed in with caution, because there are signals. The government or the non or government also gives some signals if they are not very happy. But as far as policy is concerned, I think there is no change of policy from India. That's all I would like to say.
Thank you, sir.
I would I would
Yeah,
just like to add a small point to the Taiwan issue. If should I?
Go ahead.
So I would just recently in the summit between Biden and Suga, the issue of Taiwan Strait security was also raised, wherein both of the nations, they called for Taiwan security. And also recently, in the Diet meeting of the parliament, Japan's parliament, the Prime Minister Suga mentioned Taiwan as a separate country, which further infuriated China. So that is one issue which I feel is important in Taiwan's.
Interesting. And now one last thing from
Marisab, can I add one thing on the Taiwan?
Yeah, sure.
I partly agree with Dr. Sanjeev sir that government may be officially following this the old one China policy. But what I'm getting from the inputs from the power corridors are that there is going to be reset on that post Galwan. So when are that going to be officially put into the statements? We have to see. It depends upon China-India relationship, particularly the border conflict. Well said that your question earlier that Americans being the realistic in their foreign policy. I partly agree with that. Actually, in a end of the post Cold War era, when we had the end of the Cold War, when the Americans became the hegemon, the unipolar, what American start is not what America, the world order. The Americans led it. It wasn't the realistic world order. It was an ideological world order, the liberal democracy, what they called. Had it been the realistic, they would not have intervened in Iraq, or had they been the realistic, their intervention in the Middle East would have been totally different. They would not have given totally handed over the Middle East to the Iran. Had it been the realistic, they would have been, they should have contemplated the rise of the China, but it wasn't. But the Meir Shamir also says that it was an ideological. Yes, it was on that.
Thank you, sir. But then we must disagree until we are disagreeable. I'll have this thing with me. But then one last thing from you, Dr. Yaqoob, I would like to have your take on that. How is finally this Indo-Pacific issue going to play out in the future, coming decade or for 5 years?
5 years, I think it's going to intensify, as you said it. The more the great power competition intensifies, so will be the Indo-Pacific. The reason is Bang is not only the geo-economic center, it's also the geostrategic center. Much would depend, much would depend the relationship between India and China, bilateral relation between India and China, and much will also depend on where would be this the East Asian countries heading. would they be jumping into the American sort of a lap, or would they still follow this hedging policy? I would go with David that within 3 or 4, as you said, 5 or 6 years, I think would be very much clear that they are they have to pick up the choice, they have to pick up the side, because what I'm seeing is that great power competition is going to intensify very badly, intensify very sharply.
Thank you, sir.
So would be the Indo-Pacific, of course. So would be the Indo-Pacific. That is the nerve center of everything, of the gold war.
Absolutely. I like with that thing that it's going to be it's also it's in its present form. It's the nerve center of the world politics and hotspot of the world geopolitics. With this, I'd like to wrap it up, and I'll thank you on the behalf of the State of Affairs to all the panelists that we have, to Dr. Sanjeev Kumar, to Dr. Yaqoob, to Simran. You just came out of your tight schedule and accepted our invitation, especially to Dr. Yaqoob, reason being that he was not feeling well, going to be the Dr. Simran and Dr. Sanjeev Kumar, who on the short notice came and attended this session. I individually thank you, and on the behalf of the State of Affairs, I would like to thank you all for joining us, and I'll be looking forward to have you some other day with some important geopolitical issues. So thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. We really
thank you, Maharaj. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.